My mother-in-law moved into our guest room, then started secretly messaging my married father. When my mother confronted her, she called the police and claimed my parents were trespassing. As officers led them outside, I faced my husband. Choose carefully, because tonight, I take my house back. 8 months earlier, my husband, Marcus, asked me for what sounded like a temporary favor. His mother, Valerie, had recently gone through a divorce, and the rent on her apartment had increased. Marcus said she needed 3 months to save enough for a deposit somewhere cheaper. Maybe 4 at most. She's embarrassed even asking, he told me. I'm the only person she has. We had a guest room, and our 4-year-old daughter, Piper, loved her grandmother. I wasn't excited about sharing our home, but saying no felt cruel. I agreed on 2 conditions. Valerie would save while she lived with us, and she would actively look for another place. The first week went well. She brought groceries home, folded laundry, and thanked me constantly. She kept saying she didn't want to become a burden. By the end of the second week, she had rearranged my entire kitchen. I came home and couldn't find Piper's lunch containers, my coffee filters, or the pan I used almost every night. When I asked where everything was, Valerie barely looked up from her phone. I organized it properly, she said. Your system didn't make sense. I told her I appreciated the effort, but I needed things returned to where they had been. Her expression changed immediately. I was only trying to help. That evening, Marcus moved most of it back while explaining that his mother probably felt useless and wanted to contribute. That became the pattern. Valerie crossed a boundary. I objected. Marcus explained why she had done it. She invited friends over without asking because she was lonely. She entered our bedroom while I was at work because she was looking for towels. She opened a bank statement addressed to me and claimed she hadn't noticed the name. She criticized how we raised Piper. You let her watch too much television. She shouldn't be eating that much sugar. You're too quick to comfort her when she cries. None of it seemed serious enough to justify a major argument. That was what made it so difficult. Every incident looked small by itself. Whenever I spoke to Marcus, he said, she doesn't mean it the way it sounds. One afternoon, I walked through the living room while Valerie was talking to a friend. The guest room is basically my apartment now, she said, laughing. I even have the side entrance. She stopped when she saw me. Later, I asked Marcus how the apartment search was going. He said Valerie had looked at several listings, but everything was either too expensive or too far away. Has she applied anywhere? I asked. She's looking. Has she saved anything? His shoulders tightened. Why are you interrogating me? I'm not. She's been here almost 3 months. She's my mother, Kayla. She isn't a tenant. I know. But the timeline came from you. He promised to speak to her. A week passed, and nothing changed. My parents, Monica and Grant, lived close enough to visit regularly. My mother sometimes helped with Piper, and my father was the kind of person who noticed loose hinges and broken shelves before anyone else did. He repaired a cabinet door, replaced part of our backyard fence, and helped Marcus install storage shelves in the garage. Valerie became noticeably more cheerful whenever he came over. At first, her comments sounded harmless. Your father still looks good for his age, she told me once. Another time, while Grant was fixing a cabinet, Valerie watched him and said, your mother is lucky. My ex couldn't change a light bulb without complaining. My dad gave an awkward laugh and changed the subject. Then Valerie started asking when he would be coming back. If Marcus mentioned that Grant was helping with something on Saturday, she spent longer getting ready that morning. She wore perfume around the house and found excuses to stand near him while he worked. I told myself I was imagining it. Then I walked into the garage and heard her speaking to him. Grant was standing beside a half-built shelf. Valerie was leaning against the workbench. You're always fixing things for everyone, she said. Don't you ever get tired of being the dependable one? My father gave her a confused smile. I think I'm all right. That wasn't really an answer. Her voice was softer than usual. Then she noticed me. Kayla, she said quickly. Your father was just telling me how stubborn the shelf is. Grant didn't look at her. That night, I told Marcus what I had heard. He sighed before I finished. My mom is naturally friendly. She wasn't being friendly. What do you think she was doing? I think she was flirting with my father. He rubbed his face. Do you hear how that sounds? I asked how he would feel if Grant spoke that way to Valerie. Marcus didn't answer. He said he would ask his mother to be more careful about how she came across. That response bothered me. He wasn't asking her to stop. He was asking her not to be obvious. For the next few weeks, Valerie became colder toward me and sweeter around Marcus. She prepared his favorite meals, brought up childhood memories at dinner, and told Piper stories about how close she and Marcus had always been. Whenever I entered the room, the conversation seemed to change. Then my mother called me while I was sitting in my car outside a grocery store. She was crying so hard that I thought someone had been hurt. "Did you know she was messaging your father?" she asked. I assumed she meant about one of the repairs. "What messages?" My phone vibrated several times as screenshots arrived. The first exchange looked innocent. Valerie thanked Grant for fixing a cabinet and told him she owed him dinner. My father replied that it wasn't necessary. Then the messages became personal. Valerie asked whether he ever felt unappreciated. She told him he was too attractive to act so unavailable. She asked whether he was genuinely happy in his marriage. In another message, she sent him a photo of herself dressed for a night out. "Not bad for a divorced woman my age, right?" Grant replied, "You look nice, but I don't think we should be having this kind of conversation." Valerie responded, "Relax. I'm only joking." 2 days later, she messaged him again. This time, my father wrote, "Please stop. I'm married, and this is inappropriate." Valerie sent a laughing emoji and told him he was taking everything too seriously. After that, she deleted several messages from her side of the conversation. My father had already shown them to my mother. Monica wanted to confront Valerie immediately, but Grant had asked her not to. He was embarrassed and worried that the situation would damage my marriage. I drove home without buying groceries. Marcus was in the kitchen when I arrived. Valerie was out and Piper was playing in the living room. I placed my phone on the counter and showed him the screenshots. He read them in silence. For a moment, I thought he finally understood. Then he said, "Could your dad have misread her tone?" I stared at him. She asked if he was happy with my mother. "I'm not saying it was appropriate." She sent him a picture of herself. She said she was joking. My father told her to stop, and she contacted him again. Marcus glanced toward the living room before lowering his voice. "What do you want me to do?" "I want her to move out." His face hardened. "You're throwing her out over messages?" "No. I'm asking her to leave because she crossed a serious boundary, lied about it, and hasn't followed the agreement that brought her here. She has nowhere to go. She has had 6 months to find somewhere." We argued until almost midnight. Marcus said I was making a permanent decision while angry. I reminded him that this was not the first problem. It was simply the first one serious enough that he could no longer pretend not to see it. Eventually, we agreed on a 6-week deadline. Until then, Valerie would not contact my father, involve herself in my parents' marriage, or invite people into our home without asking. Marcus spoke to her privately the next morning. I could hear Valerie crying through the guest room door. When she came into the kitchen, she looked directly at me. "I hope you're happy. I would be happier if you apologized." "For complimenting a man? For continuing after he told you to stop?" Her expression went flat. "Your mother is insecure. That isn't my fault." Marcus told her the conversation was over. She agreed not to contact Grant again, but she never apologized. For the next 3 weeks, our house became painfully polite. Valerie left apartment listings open on her laptop and made calls where everyone could hear them. But packages continued arriving. New shoes, clothes, cosmetics. A weekend bag, she said, had been heavily discounted. I asked Marcus whether she was actually saving. He told me not to monitor her spending. Then Piper's birthday approached. We planned a small gathering at our house. My parents were coming, along with a few relatives and 2 families from Piper's preschool. Monica said she would remain civil, but she wanted to speak to Valerie privately after the guests left. "I'm not trying to start a fight," she told me. "I need her to understand that what she did was not harmless." I should have told her not to do it. Instead, I convinced myself that one direct conversation might clear the tension. The night before the party, Valerie stood in the kitchen while I decorated cupcakes. "Your parents are still coming?" she asked. "Yes." She picked up one of the paper decorations and turned it between her fingers. "I hope your mother can control herself. She isn't the person I'm worried about." Valerie smiled and set the decoration down. The birthday gathering began the next afternoon. Valerie acted like the most generous grandmother in the world. She greeted guests, carried food into the backyard, and took dozens of pictures of Piper opening presents. Anyone watching would have thought she had organized the entire day. My mother barely spoke to her. Grant stayed close to Monica and avoided being alone with Valerie. Marcus moved between everyone with the nervous energy of someone expecting a glass to fall. For several hours, nothing happened. Piper laughed with her friends. The adults ate cake. Nobody raised their voice. By early evening, most of the guests had left. Piper was in the living room opening a new coloring set when my mother approached Valerie near the kitchen. "Can we speak for a minute?" Valerie folded her arms. "I suppose." I stayed near the doorway. Marcus stood several feet behind me. Monica kept her voice controlled. "I know what you sent my husband. I'm not here to create a scene. I need you to understand that it was disrespectful." Valerie rolled her eyes. "Your husband is a grown man. If he didn't like it, he could have ignored me." Grant spoke from beside my mother. "I told you to stop. And I did. You contacted me again after I asked you not to." Valerie looked at him and smiled without warmth. "You survived." My mother's face changed. "This isn't funny." "I never said it was. You were living in my daughter's house while trying to involve yourself in my marriage." I complimented him. "You asked whether he was happy with me." Valerie shrugged. "Maybe I noticed something." My mother stepped forward, but Grant touched her arm. "What you did was disgusting," Monica said. That word set Valerie off. "You do not come into my home and speak to me like that." I had stayed quiet until then. "This is not your home. You're staying here temporarily." Valerie turned toward me. "There it is. You've been waiting for an excuse to say that in front of everyone. You already have a move-out date because of your behavior. You've been trying to separate me from my son since I arrived." Marcus said her name in a warning tone. She ignored him and pointed at my mother. "This woman came here looking for a fight." "I came here looking for an apology," Monica said. "You're not getting one." Grant said they should leave. He had already picked up my mother's purse when Valerie reached for her phone. At first, I thought she was recording us. Then I heard her speaking to a dispatcher. "There are 2 people in my residence screaming at me," she said. "I've asked them to leave, and they're refusing." My mother stared at her. "We are leaving." Valerie turned away and continued talking. "Yes, I feel threatened." Nobody had touched her. Nobody had blocked her path. My parents were already gathering their belongings. I stepped toward Valerie. "Tell them the truth." She raised one hand and moved backward. "Stay away from me." Marcus stepped between us. "Kayla, stop." I looked at him. "Tell her to stop lying. Everyone needs to calm down." Then I saw Piper standing in the living room doorway, holding a blue marker and watching us. I lowered my voice and asked my parents to wait outside. My mother hesitated. "I'm not leaving you in this." Grant told her it was better to go before Piper became more upset. They stepped onto the porch, but the officers arrived before they reached their car. Valerie hurried toward the door. "They're the people I called about." One officer asked everyone to separate while the other spoke to Valerie. I explained that Marcus and I owned the house and that my parents had already been leaving. The officer remained calm. He said no one was being arrested and that they were there to de-escalate the situation. Because Valerie lived in the house and claimed she felt threatened, he asked whether my parents would agree to leave for the evening. Grant immediately said yes. My mother looked humiliated. "We didn't threaten her," she said. "She contacted my husband." The officer explained that he wasn't deciding who was right. He was only trying to prevent the argument from escalating. My father guided her toward the driveway. When I followed them outside, Monica broke down. She covered her face. "I'm sorry, Kayla. I should never have confronted her here." I hugged her. "You did not cause this." Grant looked toward the house. "Come with us. Bring Piper." I told them I needed to deal with Marcus first. When I went back inside, Valerie was telling the second officer that she had been verbally attacked inside her residence. The officer asked whether she was on the deed or lease. Valerie hesitated. "My son lives here." "That wasn't the question," I said. Marcus gave me a warning look. The officers left after confirming that the argument was over. One advised us to handle any residency dispute properly and avoid another confrontation. As soon as the door closed, I turned to Valerie. "Pack an overnight bag." Marcus stepped forward. "Nobody is going anywhere while everyone is this upset." She called the police on my parents. My mother felt cornered. She created the situation. Valerie began crying. "I knew this was what you wanted. You've been trying to get rid of me since the day I arrived." I looked at Marcus. "She leaves tonight." He shook his head. "You're forcing me to choose between my wife and my mother." "No. She forced the choice when she lied to the police. I'm asking you to acknowledge that it happened." "Where is she supposed to go?" "A hotel. A friend's house. Anywhere but here tonight." Valerie sat at the kitchen table and covered her face. "I sacrificed everything for you," she told Marcus. "I raised you by myself, and now you're letting your wife throw me into the street." Marcus looked devastated. For months, that expression had been enough to make me back down. Then I thought about my mother crying in the driveway and Piper watching us from the living room. I faced him. Choose carefully because tonight, I take my house back. The room went silent. I told Marcus that if Valerie stayed, I would take Piper to my parents' house until we decided what happened next. He accused me of using our daughter as leverage. I'm removing her from a hostile environment. Valerie whispered, she's turning your child against me. That was when Marcus finally told her to stop. It wasn't loud, but it was the first time I had heard him speak to her without immediately softening the words. He helped Valerie pack an overnight bag and drove her to a hotel. Before leaving, she stood near the front door and looked around the house. You'll regret this, she told me. I didn't answer. After they left, I locked the door and sat on the floor beside it. Piper climbed into my lap. Is Grandma mad at us? I told her Grandma was upset, but none of it was her fault. Is she coming back? I couldn't answer honestly, so I told her Grandma would be staying somewhere else for a while. Marcus returned after midnight. He said Valerie would stay at the hotel for 2 nights, then move into her friend Heather's spare room. He slept in the guest room. The next morning, he asked when Valerie could collect her belongings. I said she could come while Piper and I were at my parents' house, but she was not moving back in. Marcus accepted that, then said, we still need to help her get settled. I asked what that meant. He wanted to use our joint savings to pay the deposit and first month's rent on an apartment. How much? About $3,000. We supported her for 8 months. She didn't save as much as she expected. That is not our emergency. She is my mother. And I am your wife. He said refusing to help was revenge. I said giving her money immediately after she called the police on my parents would teach her that every consequence came with a reward. You want her to suffer, he said. No. I want her choices to belong to her. Marcus packed a small bag and said he needed space. He went to stay with a coworker for a few nights. After he left, I entered the guest room. Valerie had taken most of her clothes, but shopping bags, unopened packages, and receipts remained in the drawers. Over the previous 8 months, she had spent hundreds of dollars on clothes, restaurants, cosmetics, and weekend outings. She had not failed to save because saving was impossible. She had assumed Marcus would rescue her. I photographed the receipts and sent them to him. His only reply was, I need time to think. Valerie moved into Heather's spare room after the hotel. Within a week, relatives began contacting Marcus to ask why I had made his mother homeless. According to Valerie, my mother had come to our house, screamed insults, and threatened her. I had used the chaos to force her onto the street. The messages to my father disappeared from her version. So did the 6-week deadline. Marcus asked me not to respond publicly. I'll correct it, he said. I told him that every private conversation he had promised to handle had ended with Valerie facing no real consequences. 2 days later, Heather called me. We had met only a few times, and she sounded uncomfortable. Valerie says you won't allow her to retrieve her furniture. She doesn't own furniture in our house. She said the guest room furniture was hers. My parents bought that bed when Piper was born. There was a pause. Heather lowered her voice. She also said your father encouraged her. I sent Heather the screenshots. I didn't add commentary. I only sent the messages in order. She called again 20 minutes later. I didn't know about these. I assumed you didn't. She told me your mother invented everything. My father kept the messages. Heather apologized and ended the call. That evening, Valerie left Marcus a furious voicemail accusing us of trying to destroy her friendships. Marcus played it for me in the kitchen. This time, he didn't explain why she was upset. He sat at the table. I should have stopped this months ago. Why didn't you? He stared at his hands. Because every time I challenged her, she reminded me that everyone leaves. Valerie had raised Marcus mostly alone after his father left. Whenever Marcus disagreed with her as a teenager, she accused him of becoming like his father. When he moved away for college, she said he was abandoning her. Keeping her calm had become a habit. I'm sorry that happened to you, I said. But you brought that habit into our marriage and I had to live with the consequences. He nodded. I told him I would not continue the marriage without counseling. He agreed. Our first session was uncomfortable. Marcus said he felt trapped between 2 families. I said he kept describing the conflict as though my mother and Valerie had behaved the same way. He pointed out that Monica should not have confronted Valerie during Piper's birthday. I agreed. My mother had chosen the wrong time and place. But that mistake did not justify lying to the police. The counselor asked Marcus what he thought he was protecting by staying neutral. Peace, he said. I told him there had been no peace. There had only been avoidance. After that session, Marcus visited my parents alone. He apologized to Grant for suggesting he had misunderstood Valerie's messages. He apologized to Monica for standing silently while the officers asked them to leave. My mother told him, "I don't need you to hate your mother. I need you to stop pretending we all did the same thing." Marcus said he understood. My parents did not forgive him immediately, but they agreed to keep talking. The argument over Valerie's apartment continued. Marcus still wanted to help her. I still refused to use our joint savings. Eventually, we reached a compromise. Marcus could pay one security deposit from his personal savings directly to the apartment complex. Valerie would receive no cash, no monthly allowance, and no access to our emergency fund. I agreed because I did not want her housing situation hanging over our marriage forever. Marcus called her with the offer. Valerie said the amount was insulting. She wanted the deposit, the first month's rent, moving expenses, and money for furniture. Marcus told her no. "I should have known you'd choose your wife over your own mother," she said. He looked at me before answering. "I'm choosing the family I created. That doesn't mean I stopped loving you." Valerie hung up. For several days, she refused the offer. Then Heather gave her a deadline to leave. Valerie had started rearranging Heather's kitchen, criticizing her spending, and inviting people over without permission. Heather called Marcus and said, "I understand more than I did before." Valerie finally accepted the deposit. Marcus paid it directly and helped her move into a small apartment. When he came home, he placed our spare house key on the table. She tried to keep this. We changed the locks anyway. Valerie later sent me what she called an apology. "I'm sorry everyone became emotional and things got out of control." I replied once, "I will consider rebuilding contact when you can acknowledge what you personally did." She never answered. For the next 2 months, she saw Piper only in public places with Marcus present. I didn't stop him from maintaining a relationship with his mother, but I stopped managing it for him. I didn't remind him to call her. I didn't buy gifts from both of us. I didn't adjust family plans because Valerie was upset. Piper kept asking why Grandma didn't visit our house. We told her Grandma had her own home and that the adults were working through a disagreement. She was 4. She didn't need the full story. Marcus eventually moved back into our bedroom. Not because everything had been repaired, but because his behavior changed. When Valerie complained, he stopped bringing every complaint to me. When she insulted my mother, he ended the call. When she asked to visit our house, he told her she would need to apologize first. She accused me of controlling him. Marcus said, "Kayla didn't make this decision. I did." That sentence mattered more than any promise he had made before it. A few weeks later, my parents returned to our house for dinner. My mother hesitated at the front door. I took her hand and told her Valerie no longer had a key. Grant checked the cabinet hinge he had repaired months earlier and joked that at least one thing in the house had survived. The evening wasn't completely comfortable. Everyone was careful. But they stayed. Piper showed them her drawings. Marcus apologized again without being asked. My mother accepted it without pretending everything had been forgotten. After they left, I stood in the quiet kitchen. For months, I had believed keeping the peace meant absorbing discomfort before it reached anyone else. All that had done was protect the person causing the damage. Taking my house back was never about forcing Marcus to abandon his mother. It was about refusing to make her consequences my responsibility. Our marriage survived, but not because of one apology or one counseling session. It survived because Marcus finally stopped asking me to tolerate what he was afraid to confront. Valerie still tells some relatives that I turned her son against her. A few believe her. I no longer argue with them. She has her apartment. Marcus speaks to her on his terms. Piper sees her in controlled settings. My parents visit our home again. And Valerie no longer has a key. Sometimes I still wonder whether refusing to pay all of her expenses was too harsh. Then I remember my mother crying in our driveway while my husband stood inside asking everyone to calm down. I didn't break our family that night. I stopped pretending it was my job to hold everything together while someone else pulled it apart. So was I wrong for forcing my mother-in-law out and refusing to fund the life she failed to prepare for, or did my husband and I wait far too long to give her consequences?